our consciousness, our dream life, and these stories that we are engaged in, I think that they are extremely important. So yeah, it's good work. I think it's what needs to be done right now.
All aboard. A call or warning to all passengers to board a mode of transportation. Dream. A succession of images, ideas, emotions, and sensations that usually occur involuntarily in the mind during sleep. Train. A form of transport consisting of a series of connected vehicles moved as one unit along fixed rails. We spend around 1/3 of our lives sleeping, and while the world around us seems to shut down, our brains stay extremely active. Our dreams are very personal and intimate, and are usually only shared with those that are closest to us. Welcome to All Aboard the Dream Train, a show where the narratives and experiences created by the unconscious brain are retold by the dreamer. Hey folks, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're getting plenty of sleep. Thank you for joining me, and welcome back to another episode of All Aboard the Dream Train. If this is your first time here, each episode I interview a new guest. We talk a little bit about our sleeping habits and sleep hygiene, and of course we share dreams. Today's guest is a lucid dreamer, among many other things. He's been on numerous different talk shows and podcasts. He mentions that usually most shows want to talk about kind of the extremes, the outliers, and the shock factor type topics. As we got to talking during the interview, he mentions that he doesn't often get to talk about this side of dreaming or lucid dreaming. As we all know, there are a lot of different aspects and parts to our dreams that we can pick apart. But one of the things he mentions in this episode is that he's very interested in how certain aspects of our dreams make us feel. The senses that you could feel, or the emotional feelings, or your intuition behind the imagery or characters, or the narrative behind your dream. In my experience, most people don't open up about their feelings anyways, so why would they open up about their feelings about a silly dream? He also explains in his words the difference between lucid dreaming and your typical narrative type dream that most of us have, and his interest in both of them. This episode is going to be a two-parter. We talked for around 2 hours and easily could have made it into 5. He regularly contributes to medicinal plant and alternative healing organizations by writing and editing on topics such as meditation, psychoactive research, lucid dreaming, and alternative healing techniques. He is the brain behind Iboga Moon Productions, and Tripping the Field is his first fully realized fictional novel. If things like philosophy, hallucinogens, physics, religion hold any interest to you, I think you're going to really like this episode. Before we get into things, there's a few things I want to touch base on. I have started to get my YouTube channel up and running. For those of you that are listening to this, you can go on YouTube and catch the video of this right now. And from now on, pretty much I'm going straight to video. Also, if you could please rate, review, or share on either YouTube or Apple Podcasts, it'd really help me. It also help the show get more exposure. It would really mean a lot to me. I really enjoy talking to him. He's just one of those guys. He's real authentic and passionate about what he believes in. This is part 1 of 2. Please welcome aboard Ian Jaydid. What you've told me so far, I mean, I can't even imagine just getting the book done. Like now you're even, you're still like climbing that hill. And
Yeah, I've got, Tripping the Field is out right now. That just was released in July. And that is that's my love child. That book
Yeah.
is, I mean, honestly, if I never wrote anything else, I'm not a writer at heart.
Really?
Yeah, I'm an artist. I'm a painter. In
Oh,
fact, I was a cartoonist before I did anything else.
yeah, that's cool as
So
hell.
so I had to but I had this story. The more that I started lucid dreaming, which we'll get into, but
Hmm.
the more that I started having these insane dream experiences, which we are going to talk about, um, it's like over the years, this story started kind of slowly coalescing in the back of my mind, and it just kept on getting stronger and stronger. More pieces were coming together, and then I finally wrote Tripping the Field, which is complete absurdist fiction. It is just nonsense. It's
I love
like,
it.
yeah, it's a combination of it doesn't take itself too seriously, kind of like myself. It's
That's cool.
if you're familiar with Douglas Adams' old work, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Okay.
it's a little bit of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy meets Carlos Castaneda meets something, Hunter S. Thompson meets Jurassic Park. It's like there's this
All
kind of
right.
like dangerous element. There's a lot of shamanism involved and whatnot, and it's kind of like it's a wild ride, which is intended to start getting the reader to pay more attention to that dream life, to what is going on with those storylines I was just talking about, those controlling narratives that we're tied up in. But the point is, the reason I brought that up is because
Yeah.
now the book that I'm finishing now is called Migration, and it deals with lucid dreaming,
Yeah.
sort of on the peripheral, but it also is mostly about all of our relationship with media and narrative, especially as a species, particularly as a species that it seems to be moving from kind of a physical landscape to a digital one.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
how far we can take that, if we can take that to Matrix levels of going into a digital landscape,
Yeah.
that's still yet to be seen. But
Right.
the point is, with this book at least, that's what we want to do. If we're being honest, that's what we're trying to do. If there's a whole lot of scientists out there and there's a lot of tech companies trying to figure out how can we make a brain computer interface. They call them BCIs, actually. I mean, they are doing everything they can to connect us to machines. And
Yeah.
so the book is all about, well, what does that mean for us, for especially people who don't really understand their relationship with how their own stories, not
Yeah.
just the ones in books or in movies and stuff like that. I'm talking about even the own stories that we tell ourselves,
Right.
like we were talking about. So yeah, I'm busy, and I'm also doing artwork on the side, and I still have to keep one of those day jobs, to
Yeah.
keep. I guess the bills still need to be paid, is my
Right.
understanding. Yeah,
Uh,
that's what the landlord tells us.
right. Should probably do it, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I try to.
Um, how long were you working on tripping the field for before we get into these questions?
Oh my gosh, that went through like three different rewrites and iterations, so that took years. I mean, I
Yeah.
probably started on that book maybe 7 years ago, maybe more,
Wow.
somewhere around there,
Damn, dude.
where I first wrote and I didn't know what I had. I knew I had a story and I had a
Yeah.
lot of ideas. I thought maybe it's a screenplay, which actually that's my next project now. After I'm
Cool,
done
dude.
with this, I'm turning the whole thing into a screenplay. I'm going to try to see what I can do to turn it into maybe a several part series, something like that, because
That's
that's
awesome, man.
how I wrote the book. Like I
Yeah.
said, I'm not a writer at
Hmm.
heart, and I think when you read it, you'll see that I'm more of a movie guy. Like, I'm a movie buff. In fact, I used to I went to film and video school
Oh, cool.
right after high school. I was fascinated with graphic design. I was fascinated with film and video.
Yeah.
And I know how shots are set up. I know
Yeah.
everything about the theory of film. So when I wrote the book, I just said, all right, let's suppose I was filming this. Scene one, how
Hmm.
do we enter? That sort of thing.
Damn.
And so a lot of the readers, they tell me, I feel like I'm watching a movie because I can see how all of this, like the camera's eye is taking me through this. I'm like, that was the idea, because I'm not really much of a writer. I'm a storyteller. That's how I feel. Like,
Yeah.
there's many people who are, writing is not my main forte, is what it is. I'm a storyteller though, and I think it's a great story. But
That's
yeah.
a very unique angle, though. I mean, having that vision in your head, all you really had to do, which I'm not saying it was easy, but all you had to do was put those images into words.
Right.
Not easy, but still, I think that's probably a different angle that most people are used to, readers and writers.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's how I did it. I would just go. I would take scene one. All right, how would this open up? Like if I was shooting this, that's kind of how I thought of everything. How
Hmm.
would this be presented in film wise? So I'm hoping that the translation into a screenplay is not going to be terribly difficult. That that's yet to be seen. I've wrote one screenplay in my life that back in college as a joke basically, but
Yeah.
that was but so we'll see. All of this is new to me, so
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. We'll see where it
I
goes.
mean, you got to get your hands dirty at some point and just kind of
Absolutely.
get it all over you.
Yep, that's right. So that's the excitement. So yeah, it's taken years, and eventually down the road, I would love to write a sequel to Tripping the Field. If
Cool.
hopefully by then I've got a little bit more of an audience. Hopefully I'll have a few more. I've picked up some more readers and whatnot. And
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, I would down the road, I'd like to do a sequel because the book lends itself to a continuing storyline with some of these characters I've developed. The ones that survive, that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's
So
awesome, man.
yeah, yeah.
Really cool, man. Well, again, I appreciate your time. And
Thank you.
could you tell anybody that's listening your name, age, and location?
Absolutely. So I'm Ian Jaydid. I am 47, and I'm right on the front range of the Rocky Mountains in Boulder, Colorado.
Have you always been out there in Colorado?
No, I'm from Chicago, so
Cool.
I've been out here for about 19 years, somewhere
Okay.
around there. I moved out literally like it was like 2 months. I can always remember this. It was 2 months before 9/11.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it
Yep.
was right. Yeah, so that kind of sticks in your head a
Yeah.
bit. It was,
Just a little.
maybe you kids have heard about it. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was like 2 months before 9/11, and
Wow.
yeah, I'm from Chicago. Well, I spent some time in Indianapolis because I went to school outside of Indianapolis. So I was out there for a few years as well, and I worked as a graphic designer initially. If you've
Cool.
heard of Bob Ross. Remember Bob Ross?
Yes.
Happy Little Trees, that
Yes. Oh,
yeah,
dude.
yeah, I worked for that studio. Yeah,
Really?
I worked for that. Well, yeah, in fact, Bob Ross passed away while I was on campus. It was very, very
Damn.
sad. Yeah, it was crazy. So yeah, I learned some of the old when Photoshop was like in its infancy kind of thing. Like, yeah,
Wow.
I'm Photoshop like 1.5 old, like yeah. So that's probably the best explanation. But yeah, I
Wow,
worked
dude.
for them back in the day, and so like I said, like my whole thing was visual. I'm a
Yeah.
visual designer. I didn't keep up with it. I know how to use Photoshop and Illustrator,
Sure.
but I'm more of a painter. I mean, like yeah, the stuff you're seeing
Yeah.
around me. That's the main thing that I do is canvas kind of work now.
Canvas.
Yep.
That's rad, man. Hey, how did he die?
Uh, I believe it was some form of cancer. It was some
Oh,
debilitating kind of disease, as I
okay.
recall. Yeah, he was sick for a long time. I honestly, now that you're asking me, I don't really remember. I
Hmm.
think it was some form of cancer, is what I believe, but
Yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you can't watch him and be in a bad mood, and I think
He was
that
such a
may be
great guy.
impossible.
You see him around campus, and he really was dressed like that all the time. Like it was like
Really.
watching somebody who just stepped out of like the Scooby Doo van, man. I mean the afro, the giant collared shirts, and like oh, he was great. I mean he was just such a loving individual. Yeah, yeah, that was sad. Very sad when he passed away.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Um, so you kind of hit on this a little bit, but what are some of
Yep.
your other hobbies and passions?
Well, I moved out to Colorado because it's not Chicago. That was the main thing, and I like mountains. That's a big thing for me. So hiking is. I'm an outdoors person.
Cool.
I cannot be indoors for too long. In fact, even when I'm doing something like I love, like writing, I can only sit in front of a computer for maybe like 2, maybe 3 hours at a stretch. And then I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I got to go outside. I don't care how cold it is. I don't care what's going on. So I'm a real outdoors type of a person. But my passions are, you know, mostly my writing. My writing is the main thing that's like my number one focus right now. And everything else is like it's kind of like when I get to paint, that's more like my free time is kind of,
Gotcha.
I mean, I enjoy all of it, but it's, so that's kind of the main things. I'm always kind of like tagging back and forth between trying to keep a balance, I guess you would say, between that left and right brain sort of thing, like between the
Totally.
writing and the painting. Cause it hits different sides of your head a
Yeah.
little bit. So it's nice to have that balance.
Yeah.
It's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've been painting forever? I mean, was that something you've been doing
Yes.
since you were little?
ever since I could hold a pen, man. I mean, I like that. I was drawing cartoons ever since I can remember.
Yeah.
I was looking at cartoons in magazines and newspapers and stuff like that. And then when cartoons like Calvin and Hobbes came around, I was just kind of duplicating uh, the guy's style. And there was another cartoon, I'm not sure how old you are, but you may not remember it. It was real popular back in the 80s called Bloom County.
Nope.
Yeah, Bloom County was like it's actually the guy, the art cartoonist just picked it up again fairly recently, a few
That's
years
kind of
ago.
cool.
But his cartooning style was something that I was just thrilled with. Does Bill the Cat sound familiar? Bill the
Uh,
Cat or
uh-uh.
Opus? Opus. He's a
Opus sounds
penguin.
familiar.
Opus was a penguin, and he was a character on Bloom County. So sometimes
Hmm.
people only know about Opus or Bill the Cat. Bill the Cat
Yeah.
was like a meth-headed cat, and he was just to me when I was a little kid. I'm like, I got it. Like I understood like raw humor a little bit, even
Hmm.
at a young age, like an 8-year-old kid. I'm like, yeah, I get that this cat's like on drugs, and I thought
He's
that was
fast.
funny, you know. So I was
Yeah.
trying to always draw this like he was like the anti Garfield, because even as an 8-year-old, I was like, Garfield's like not funny. It's like too,
He's
yeah, I
lame.
get, yeah, haha.
Right.
He likes lasagna. Like I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not funny. Like, oh, that cat's on drugs. That's hilarious. Like I had a twisted humor from a very young age. So yeah, cartooning was the main thing, and then it wasn't until down the road, like after I was like maybe even in high school or out of high school, when I really, probably in college even, when I really had my own space, and then I
Yeah.
could start painting, because I never felt like in my house that I could really like,
Mhm.
you can, painting is messy, you have to
Yeah.
like, you got to set down drop cloths and whatnot, and it's a
Yeah.
mess. So it took a while for me to get into that, but now I've just been, that was it, painting and cartooning. Those are my main things. Yeah.
I think it's really important to hold on to some type of art form. There was a long period of time where I didn't have anything, and I think I really missed out. I just think it's whether it's writing or actual pencil, paper, or something. I think everybody needs to have a little something to kind of get out of their system.
It helps you process, definitely.
Yeah, I
Like
think it
it
does.
totally does. Like it's a nice release, and helps you, it is a very cathartic sort of thing, or it can be
Hmm.
if you do it right. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, I think it's very important. And I would say that even for writers, I would say that what I've learned about writing is that you you need to go do something different. Like I said, like you can't just, I
Mm.
don't know, some people imagine, and I kind of imagine even like people like Stephen King, it's like, my God, that guy's kicked out so many books. You really get the feeling that guy really just sits in front of a computer all day long. And maybe he does, I don't know. But
Right.
I would say that if you want to keep your sanity with whatever you do like that, you got to go balance that with something totally different,
I
something totally else.
I agree, man. Like, kind of going off topic a little bit, but like I think if you spend a lot of time getting good at one thing,
Yeah.
you get bored because you get good at it.
Right.
And at least I
Totally.
do. And then like now I'm not being challenged, and now
Right.
I'm not working parts of the brain that need to be worked. So I think it's important to,
You've got to challenge yourself. I like that. That's really one of the things too. It's like you can take your craft and then go do something that, uh, you know, this is, I'm
mhm,
not sure how this is going to turn out. And
right.
you have to take a little bit of a risk.
Hmm.
So absolutely. That's very important. Sure.
Stay challenged, I think is.
Stay mentally challenged.
Well,
Yeah, good.
right.
Right.
uh, how would you describe yourself? This is a pretty difficult question for some. I mean, for anybody really. But how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, characteristics, right? I don't know. I try not to. I try
Yeah,
not.
that's
It's
fair.
like that's kind of like what I'm trying to get away from, is like unboxing myself, and that's part of that. You know, disengaging from that narrative that I was talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, I've got characteristics. I have a sense of humor.
Hmm.
I like the visual arts, and I love story. I'm fascinated with storytelling. I think storytelling is, I'm a storytelling fanatic, but
Yeah.
I love the study of storytelling as well. And I think there's so much to be learned about, like I said, about those narratives that we carry around and how we relate to them. So that's connected to my lucid dreaming and yada, yada, yada. So who I am, I mean, those are the things I do, but, I
Hmm.
couldn't tell you. I don't know. Maybe 20 years ago, I'd give you a nice list of all sorts of like traits and whatnot, but
Right.
I'm trying, the more that I've gotten into this lucid dreaming game, the more I've realized that it's really, if you really want to be lucid
Hmm.
in your dreams, you really want to start waking up, you have to drop a lot of those characteristics that you've identified with for so long. You've got to kind of drop the ego. You have to drop all, and just go, all right, these
Yeah.
things are here. These are tendencies that I have picked up and whatnot, but I don't, you can't get wrapped up in them too much, because eventually you're going to have to let them go,
Yeah.
even if either that's in the dream state or at the end of your life. It's going to be dropped regardless, one way or the other. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my deal, is learning to drop that narrative
Hmm.
now. And it turns out there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of power in that. So
I can definitely respect that, man. I mean, I think it's easy for people to say I am this, or like, you know,
it
um,
makes us feel comfortable,
no,
because we
absolutely.
we like to think we're a thing. We like
Yeah,
to think
totally.
I'm a solid thing, and I'm this, and this.
Right.
And the problem that I think those people are the ones that break the hardest when one of
Mm,
those things are taken away, though. If
yeah.
you identify yourself as anything, like even just with the job that you have, well, I'm a
Hmm.
lawyer, or I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher, yada yada. When that's taken away from you, it's like that's like well, no, well, now who am I?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you shouldn't have identified yourself with that to begin with. It's just a thing. It's all temporary.
Temporary, and it's always changing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's always changing.
I loved your answer. That's fucking awesome, man. I love it. Moving on here. How do
Moving
you
on.
moving on? What helps you relax or unwind at the end of the day?
Oh, oh man, at the end of the day, I try to relax throughout the day. So I
Okay.
don't know. That's something that I'm really working for. Like, and it's funny because we do have. That's another one of those. You're gonna hear me going on repeat. I'm gonna use this word a lot.
All
It's
right.
another one of these collective narratives that we carry. The idea that, well, at the end of the day is when you relax. That's the day. That's the time you unwind, right? And what I'm trying to really get at is I'm trying to figure out, well, what is it that keeps me anxious or keeps me on edge throughout the day? Sometimes I'm even just going to work, and I'm like, you find yourself a little bit of like, it's not like you're going to the park or you're going to a beach, right? Like, you're going to work. And so there's a certain level of rigidity. There's a certain level of, a little bit, a little bit, you're maybe a little tense, a little bit anxious,
Yeah.
just slightly, even if it's a subtle thing, not that, even if there's nothing bad happening at work, it's just, that's kind of our mentality towards going forward with the things that we have to accomplish.
Yeah.
So, uh, so I just smoke weed all day long.
Cool.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But my point is that, so meditation is a huge thing for me.
Okay.
If I did not know how to meditate, luckily I was lucky enough to have a father who's been teaching yoga since the 70s. So I learned how to meditate at a very young age, and I was very fortunate for that. So that to me, if there's one thing that I think should be taught as a basic in our public schools, is, or to every child, is
Yeah.
you should learn how to meditate. That's just a basic. It's just like just learning how to walk, learning how to do everything else. It's like, oh yeah, and you also have to learn how to deal with your mind. You have to learn how to deal with that, uncontrollable inner dialogue, yada yada. So yeah, so I mean, that to me, yes. And I do smoke marijuana.
Hmm.
It is legal now. I never thought I'd see the day where it was actually fully
Right.
legalized. But
Right.
crazy enough, that did happen in my state, and yours as well, as I
Yeah.
recall, in Oregon, which is just shocking. But
Mm-hmm.
also, marijuana is also not a, it's an opportunity to relax and to unwind, but a lot of people do not use it like that. I've
Yeah.
seen lots of people smoke, a whole bong full of dope, and they're going to go right back to thinking about all the same anxious, nerve-wracking sort of stuff that they were before. So it's all depends on how you want to deal with it.
How
So it's,
yeah,
yeah,
how you
yeah,
use it too.
how you use it,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. But if you have a meditative mindset, to me, meditation is the number one thing.
I would agree. That's super important. That's something I'm definitely trying to grasp. I mean, like you said, everybody should. be taught how to do that. And
Yes.
it really is what it comes down to is like just chilling for a little bit with yourself,
Right.
like outside, you know, stimulus or responsibilities, like get away from them for a little bit.
Just for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Just drop them. Just like don't try to solve. We're problem solvers. We're like constantly trying
Hmm.
to solve a
All the time.
problem, like all the time. And it's nice. That's one of the best things about meditation is that that's the point where you can pull aside and go, you know what? Those problems are still going to be there in 10 minutes, but for this 10 minutes, I'm just going to sit aside. I'm not going to solve those problems. I'm just going to let them be there for a while. And it's shocking how difficult that can be because
Yeah.
our brain just goes, what do you mean you don't want me to do anything?
Yeah.
It's very confusing. It's like it's so simple it
Hmm.
doesn't make sense, right? I
It's
mean,
like
that's
yeah.
yeah, it's tough. It's tough for the brain to do something, to do the most simplistic things like no, just sit there and don't do anything. And
Hmm.
it's like, but I got
Yeah.
to solve a problem. I can think of some new solution to something. Yada yada yada. It's
Hmm.
learn how to shut that off.
I
Yeah.
mean, as you said, I mean, it's always happening. Even when we're dreaming or sleeping, our brain doesn't turn off. It
No.
is always working. So for us in our waking state to be able to say, okay, we're actually turning off for a little bit here is, yeah, I
Right.
think that's super important.
It is hugely important, yes. And what's funny is that all of the strongest minds
Mm-hmm.
on the planet have almost unanimously agreed that ironically is the point where you actually have the best insights.
Hmm.
Einstein has said this. I mean, going back to Newton, as I recalled, he said something to the same effect where, Isaac Newton was one of the probably the biggest geniuses on the planet who's ever
Mm-hmm.
lived. I mean,
Hmm.
he used to say something to the effect of, I would come up with these ideas, how to solve a math problem or something like that when I was just sitting and just staring at my fire and not doing anything. I wasn't trying to do anything,
Right.
like he didn't call it meditation because, it was like back in the day, they didn't really
Yeah.
have that word, in the Western culture, or
Right.
whatever. But,
Totally.
it was these guys talk about these things. It's totally meditation is what they were going
Hmm.
into. So yeah, it's huge, hugely important.
Hmm. Now, what does your meditation look like? Because like meditating is such a broad
It is
term. Like what does Ian do when he wants to meditate?
nothing. That to me, I would say that first of all, I identify. I love that. Listen to me. I identify as an atheist, and there's an asterisk at the end of that, but we can talk
Okay.
about that later. But I would also say that if I had to also categorize myself, that's kind of one of the reasons I just call myself an atheist because I'm just tired of categorizing myself. There's so many.
I
I've
agree.
I've I've had so many different people say, "Oh, you know what you sound like? You sound like this. You kind of sound like you come from this philosophy." But I'm like, it's all true. But I mean, at the end of the day, I also don't believe in the supernatural. But we'll talk about that too because I
Cool.
also I also believe in astral projection, which people get very confused about that seeming duality. So my meditation is doing nothing. I'm going to sit there, and my goal, if there is such a thing in meditation, is to absolutely don't do anything. I'm not going to solve anything. I'm not going to think about anything. I'm
Yeah.
not going to even visualize anything. I mean, so the ultimate for me, I'm trying to just be conscious and to get everything else out of the way. And because that to me is what a true meditation is. If you can just stop the activity and
Hmm.
just be, that is your natural state. Then you are just conscious. So that's what I just sit and do nothing for about 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, you know
However long it takes.
however long, however I feel like it, like
Where do you do nothing though? Are you in your bedroom? Do you have like I know some people have like a certain like a pad they sit on. Like, is it different every time or?
it can be sometimes. Yeah, this little chair that I'm sitting in right now, it's like one of these little rocking video game chairs that I'm
Okay.
sitting in. I'll
Yep.
sit in this thing sometimes, but my favorite is to just go for a walk. And
Okay.
I love to hike. So that's what, they'd actually call it walking meditations in the
Hmm.
Zen tradition. And I think that that's the best thing because you are just, uh, again, so many people, when they go outdoors, but then they are still engaged in an activity.
Hmm.
And I think that they miss all of it. I'm always shocked, especially living on the front range of the Rocky Mountains, how many people come out and visit us and they're probably standing in around 14,000-foot mountain peaks that, so many people in this world don't ever get to see.
Hmm.
And they're on a business call or they're staring at their phones. And it just shocks me. I'm
Yeah.
like, just stop and just
Totally.
look around. Like, look at where you're at. It's
Yeah.
amazing. So that's what I do. I my favorites are when I go hiking, because then I'm gone for like 2 hours. I don't bring my phone with me or anything, and I go out. Call
Just
it
walking.
call it a spirit quest or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
I just go out. I don't think about anything, and I just try to just be aware of what's around me. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because, like, as someone that doesn't, not that I don't meditate, but I don't know what maybe meditating looks like for me yet. But like, I
Sure.
just imagine someone with candles and crystals and sitting
Sure, you
there
could. I mean, it's
with
all
their
it's all a bunch of gimmicks as far as I'm concerned. Like, but there's also a thing, our brain also likes ritual too.
yeah,
So I mean, I
absolutely.
don't discount that entirely, as long as you know what it is that you're doing. Sometimes I do, like, my house is filled with, like, yeah, candles and incense and all kinds of stuff like that. I mean,
Sure. I got a lot of that stuff too. Yeah.
it looks like a new age gift shop, but at the same time, it's just, I like looking at, like, those Himalayan salt rock candles, and I got a couple of them right there. They're awesome. They're just cool to
Yeah.
look at. I
Yeah.
love the light from them. So if you've gotten, my point is if you've gotten used to having those things around you, like, oh, now I light my candle and I
Hmm.
light this incense, you can kind of start tuning your brain.
Hmm.
Then you start training it. So when you go into a meditation, your brain goes, oh, I see. When you light that candle and you do this, that's my signal to shut up. So
Sure.
that is helpful.
Yeah.
So I don't,
Good point.
yeah, if people have, some people have, like, little areas that they set up and go, I meditate in the same spot every day and I do the same little ritual, I've got no problem with that. My suggestion is just that, be aware of what that's really doing for you. It's not like, I don't know. Again, I'm an atheist, so I'm not gonna. I don't care about your icons or your religious things. I
Totally.
would say that it's all coming from you. It's all about what your own mind and body are doing for you.
I think walking in nature resonates with me really well. I mean,
Yeah.
you're soaking it all in. You're not having to think about anything. So I like that one.
You're in Portland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're, like, surrounded by mountains too.
Oh
You got
yeah, man.
yeah, you got all kinds of awesome scenery out there. I love Oregon. Oregon's my second home. I
Really?
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I
You
love
had
it out
family
there.
out here, didn't you?
I have my mother and her whole entire family live out in Eugene,
Yeah.
Oregon. So
Beautiful.
I love Eugene. There's, like,
Yep.
not a lot of work out there, so it's a little
Hmm.
unstable, but it's a beautiful little town. And yeah, I'll probably be out there in a couple of months. Yeah, I
Nice,
love it.
man.
That's awesome. Yep, indeed.
Love it. All right. Sleep aids or rituals. We were kind of just talking about that a little bit. Do you have anything that you that's just
Sleep
like a,
aids.
a daily thing for
You mean,
sleep?
like, to get prepared for bed? Is that what you mean, or?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Like I said, sometimes will meditate before
Hmm.
bed if I'm. It depends how tired I am. If I know that I'm going to sit and I'm literally just going to be, my head's going to be,
Um,
falling back in 30 seconds. It depends on how tired I am at the end of the
yeah.
day. If I feel I still got a little bit of energy, even if I can sit for like a solid 15 minutes, I'll meditate beforehand. And absolutely, that's great. But it's only if I know that I have the mental awareness. But I don't use sleep aids. I don't. I mean, as far as, like, herbs or any, I've
Yeah.
never.
Any of that
Nothing
stuff.
like that. I'm sitting. And it's funny because I say that, and I've literally got a whole bag of valerian. I've got
Oh yeah.
valerian root, and valerian root does work for me. I don't know. I've heard it doesn't work for everybody,
Yeah.
but valerian root does work.
Hmm.
That valerian root, if I take at least, like, I think it's like 400 milligrams of it or something
Yeah.
like that, yeah, it's that'll put me out for a while,
Gets
sure.
you
And
sleepy.
yeah, it gets me sleepy, and I feel like I've had some luck with melatonin.
Hmm.
I don't know. It was so subtle. It was
Yep.
really hard to tell whether it was just a placebo effect or
Yeah.
whatever, which I do not discount the placebo effect at all.
Absolutely.
I think the placebo effect is amazing, but
Very real.
yeah, it's very real. It's amazing. So, but yeah, I'm not, I don't take any of that stuff regularly.
I got you.
Yeah.
Uh, do you share your bed or do you have it all to yourself? Do you have any pets or?
Oh my God, no. I mean, I was married once. I've had girlfriends and whatnot, but so
Okay.
I've definitely spent many, many years sharing, 20% of the bed for the girl who, is half my size, but somehow gets 80% of it. I'm not sure how that works out, but yeah, that's always the situation. But no,
Right.
lately I am sleeping alone. I sleep on my back. I have no problem sleeping. I sleep very well, and I will, if I can get 9 hours, I'm good. I can sleep 9 hours without
Okay.
any problem whatsoever. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Solid.
Yeah.
Um, do you keep a dream journal?
I uh no, but I would say that I have written down a lot of my lucid dreams, but I don't have to write them down. I've written some of them down because I've put them into like a narrative form for if I may turn them into articles or something down the road
Yeah.
or something like that. And I do tend to remember more details when I write them down. That there's definitely something about dream journals. I'm not poo-pooing the idea of dream
Right.
journals. If you want to get into this practice that I'm going to be talking about, lucid dreaming, absolutely. I think that a dream journal is good. It starts tuning your mind
Hmm.
to where it needs to be. I mean, is putting your head in the right head space of like you're starting to focus consciously on what it is that's going on in your nightlife. It's hugely important. And when you start writing stuff down, no matter if it's a dream or even it's just something that happened to you in real life,
Hmm.
when you write something out, you naturally will start remembering more details because you are forced to then slow down and take it piece by piece and going, what happened first? What happened next? And then your mind will really start pulling apart all those details that you weren't conscious of. Remember, we were talking about that earlier.
Absolutely.
All that information that your brain stores, it's
Yep.
all there.
Yep.
And so you have to kind of train your brain to slow down a little bit. So, given that,
Hmm.
but my interest with a dream journal would be only for my lucid dreams. And the thing
Gotcha.
about lucid dreams is that you generally tend to they don't seem to fade in memory. This seems to be a universal quality with many
Hmm.
people.
Interesting.
I can remember my lucid visions from 20 some years ago, and
Hmm.
they are, if I can really just sit for a moment and feel it out, it's like I'm right there again.
Hmm.
It's a weird thing, and that's not uncommon. Apparently lots of people have the same sort of feeling
Interesting.
that, yeah, that they can recall a lucid dream from years and years later with exact crisp detail. It's
Hmm.
weird. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what that's about. So yeah, I
Wild.
don't have, so it kind of like cuts down my, my interest in really writing all this stuff down. I'm like, well, it's right there. If I really want to jump back into it, I can
Totally.
recall it with no problem. Yeah.
Probably for a beginner though, a good place
Hmm.
to start at least.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
really, if you're trying to get into, or just starting, even if it's not lucid dreaming, you just want to start looking at your dreams and start
Journal. Yeah.
analyzing them. Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, yeah, start it with, yeah, get a journal and
Hmm.
start doing that in the morning, first
Hmm.
thing when you get up, before you even, because when you start your day, that whole idea of starting your day, it's like your brain goes into a different narrative. There's that word again.
Yeah.
You have a whole storyline that you work in throughout the day, right? It's like, oh well, now again, I'm this person and I'm going to
Hmm.
go do this job and I'm da 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 da, and
Yeah.
these are the responsibilities I have. But when you first wake up, as you know, if you've had a particularly long night's sleep, especially, you ever have those few moments you go, wait, what day is it again? Like what,
Right.
none of that is downloaded yet,
Yeah.
so that, to me, that's the fresh spot that you really want to start writing down those dreams, because you're kind of still in that state a little bit, and you can
Yeah.
just go, all right, I can remember it better. Yeah.
Totally.
Totally.
Absolutely. First thing in the morning
Yep.
before you get up, because dude, I forget things immediately after I jump out of bed.
So many people do. Our
So.
daily life is so different from our dream life. It's like you've got two stories that are not
Hmm.
really, they don't really cope together very well. So yeah, it's like you kind of have to decide which one are you dealing with.
Very different. Very
Yeah,
different.
very very different.
Are you a night owl or early riser?
Who left if left to my own devices, I would probably be normally going to bed at like 1 in the morning, somewhere around there,
Hmm.
and then getting up like around 9, 10, something. It depends if but if I have to go to work, it's not up to me, right? It's
Totally.
I got to go do whatever, keep the hours I need to keep. But right now I'm only working part time. I mean, I'm just trying to make sure if all of this falls apart and I sell no books again or anything, that I can still pay that rent that I need to pay for. But
For sure.
when I don't go into work, yeah, I'm generally getting up around 9 or so. That's fine. I don't like to. I used to sleep much later. Like I used
Hmm.
to sleep till like 11 noon if I could, and I don't really care for doing that anymore, because
Yeah.
I like to exercise. I like to get my day started, and I don't know, go.
You adapt well.
Mm, totally. Yeah, I can go
Yeah.
back and forth. Not a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like getting up at, I'll tell you what, it would really throw me off if I had to suddenly start getting up at 6 a.m. If that was the case,
Gotcha.
I mean, I could do it, but
Yeah.
yeah, I would not my body would not be happy with me for about a week. A
That's
week
fair.
or two is what I would think. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Do you track your sleep at all?
How so? Like how long I sleep, or what do you mean?
Yeah, hourly, or do you have any of those? I know like Fitbits, sometimes those kind
Oh,
of tell you,
mm-mm.
n- none of that. You've never done
Nope.
it, tried that
Nope.
before?
Yeah, no
Okay.
gadgets, no. Yeah, I mean, I know that I generally sleep 8 to 9 hours, but
Okay.
that's about it. I don't do any of that. No
Yeah.
tracking. I've never really looked at my patterns. I had a roommate for a while who had was it sleep apnea? I believe it was, where like he had to have all these monitors and whatnot tracking exactly
Oh wow.
of his,
Yeah, yeah.
all of his things, all his breathing pattern, his heart rate. I guess he needed all that stuff because,
Wow.
in case he had an attack or something, it would this whole thing had to kick in so that he could breathe.
Damn.
Yeah, so that's luckily I've never done anything like that.
Yeah.
No.
You trust your body enough. Your
Yep.
body. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
totally.
clear.
That's gonna do what it's gonna do. It's all right.
It kind of seems like just one more thing to have to worry about, before you go to bed. It's
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
um, you hit on this a little bit. It sounded like 8 or 9 hours is pretty average, but I mean, is that your average amount of sleep that you would say?
Yep. Yeah, probably about 8 hours, 8 to 9 hours. That I do better in general if I'm doing about 9 hours.
Okay,
I do. Yeah,
function
ten.
much better.
Yeah, it's like that seems to be the sweet spot for me. I can sleep 10. I have. I still
Hmm.
regularly will sleep 10 hours. I
Yeah.
have no problem sleeping 10 hours. But if it's anything more than 10 hours, my
Yeah.
energy is just it's not right for like
Yeah.
most of the day. Like there's like if I sleep for too long, it's like it's not. I don't know. I don't like it. My
There's a sweet
energy is
spot.
there is, and for me, it's like right around if I do 8 to 9 hours, I'm great.
Yeah.
That seems perfect for me. Yeah.
As you're sleeping, is it consistent? Like, um, do you wake up much throughout the night, or are you like once you're out, are you out?
Uh, Mostly it's what it seems is that I'm asleep for about 3 to 4 hour chunks.
Okay.
So I'll be asleep for about 4 hours, and then it's like I don't know, like it's dry in Colorado, so sometimes it's just a matter
Hmm.
of like I just need water. I
Hydrate.
mean, it is yeah, we have to hydrate constantly. Like
Yeah.
it's like it's actually considered high desert. So
Hmm.
yeah, and of course I'm talking a lot right now, but I mean I am just like I'm drinking constantly,
Yeah.
which also means at some point I have to go up and use the bathroom
Right.
as well. But
Totally.
I will wake up with like just a dry throat or something like that. But beyond that, I'm a real quiet sleeper too. Apparently,
Hmm.
I don't move around. Like I don't even shift without waking up.
Interesting.
Yeah, like I fall asleep on my back for the most part, but even if I like turn around to my side, I'm aware of it. Like I wake up just for a second just to
Hmm.
readjust my pillows or whatever. I'm
Yeah.
very aware of what's going on, and then I will fall back asleep for about 3 to 4 hour block
Huh.
somewhere around there. So maybe that's I don't know what that is, but that may
Yeah.
help. That may be one of the reasons I'm prone to lucid dreaming as well, because I kind of have those little breaks. I just kind of become conscious for a moment,
Hmm.
like and I'm just like, okay, I know what's going on. I know where I am, and now I'm going back to sleep. And then you kind of uh, you get that opportunity to kind of bring your consciousness into the dream
Yeah.
state. But it doesn't always happen. But
Yeah.
that may help
Yeah.
that pattern that I'm talking about. Yeah,
I've heard that it kind of grounds you for a second, and then you jump back into your sleep cycle and
sure.
into REM and whatnot. I've heard
Yep.
it could
Yep.
help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before I forget, do you have a time where you feel more creative, like when your creative thoughts are flowing much heavier? Like, is there a window of like a few hours where it's just there and you're feeling it much more than the rest of the day?
Yes.
And what time?
If we're talking about just naturally, like that, if I'm not like doing anything like a meditation or anything like that, the evening for some reason is much more of a creative time for me. That's the evening is when, or at least later afternoon to evening is when it's easier for me to write or paint or come up with new ideas.
Hmm.
But the reality is that if I am doing one of those walking meditations, that is when I've got so many just insights hitting me left and right, and that can happen anytime. If I'm,
Hmm.
sometimes depending on how nice it is outside, one of these places I work for is only about a 45-minute walk away from my house. So I will absolutely get up early and do a meditation, a walking meditation to work.
Hmm.
And that I there so it doesn't matter what time of the day it is if I'm doing
Gotcha.
meditation, and I will just be flooded with insights or
Hmm.
ideas, or I'll be, there's a part of my head that just starts piecing together, no, you should do this with the book, and or this with that painting, or
Interesting.
yada yada. But yeah, but that's if I'm meditating. But normally, yeah, it seems like the evening time, once I've done everything, you've gotten
Yeah,
all your business out of the way for the day,
totally.
and then it's just easier to go, all right, your brain's just sort of like on, it's just on autopilot a bit, so we could
Autopilot.
just sort of start, like, well, I can wander now and start
Yeah,
coming up with crazy ideas.
I got you.
Yeah,
Very cool, man. Favorite sleeping position? I know you kind of said that you're.
lay on my back. Well, I will generally fall asleep on my back, but then I'll turn on my left or right side. I don't know. What's weird is that my sleeping patterns are different from moving from my left to my right. I can't really say how, it's too abstract, but I know that there is a change in my dreams
Interesting.
and my sleeping, in if I'm on my left or my right, and both seem equally comfortable. So I
Hmm.
don't know what that's about.
Hmm.
I'm not really sure. I've heard different ideas about this, about the way that your organs lay on your lungs or your heart or something on one side as opposed to another. I have no idea. I
Right.
don't know if it's about blood flow or what.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what it is, but
Hmm.
there seems to be a difference. But in general, I would say that if I'm sleeping on my side, I sleep better on my left side. It seems like I dream very well on that side, and but I'll usually will start falling asleep on my back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
What interests you in dreams?
What interests me, or if we're talking normal dreams, right? Is that what we're doing,
Let's
or you want
start
me to?
there. Let's
Okay,
start. Yeah.
sure. Uh, Phew. I would say that in normal dreams where I am, my whatever you call it, the subconscious is trying to show me something, or it is, you know, creating some storyline, that sort of thing. The thing that fascinates me perhaps the most are the things where it's something that I didn't expect. Usually it's an emotion, like something happens where I am perhaps, shaken emotionally. I'm like, and then, because then I know, like, well, that, what the heck was that about? Like, what was going on there? I want to understand, like, when any strong emotion comes up in a dream, I know that, okay, well, it wasn't about what was actually going on in the dream. That's all symbolic. There was
Hmm.
something that the thing I was crying over represented, or the thing I was angry over represented, or the thing I was madly in love with, it represented something. So that's the stuff that always stops me. When I wake up in the morning, I'll be going, all right, what was that about? What was really going on underneath that? And I have a way to deal with that. I have ways to answer those questions, but that's what fascinates me the most.
Kind of the feeling that you get overall from those experiences.
It's the
Say that.
feeling I get overall, and it's also uh, like, for me, I think one of the questions we don't ask enough in our dreams is, how did you feel about some specific thing that happened? Like,
Hmm.
there is there was one dream I had. Now I'm just pulling something out of the air here from
Hmm.
a couple of months ago, where I was trying to save this dog in a well. It's not a dog I've ever seen before. It's not even, didn't even look like a dog I ever owned, but
Hmm.
I was bawling my eyes out trying to save this dog. Like, this dog meant everything to me for some
Yeah.
reason. And so what I would do is, some people will go, well, we're going to look at, well, what color was the dog and what kind of dog was it? And da, 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 da. And I think before you ask any of those questions, to me, for me at least, my
Hmm.
first question is, what was my feeling about that dog? What did I sense? What was my intuition about it?
Hmm.
Like, what was my, if I had to nail down what my relationship was with that animal. And, and
Hmm.
that's when that to me, that's when I start getting really, I can start zeroing in on what was the emotional response really about,
Yeah.
what was really going on there.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
that's how I handle that sort of stuff. What, how do you feel about what's going on? How do you really feel about these characters? Because sometimes people will come into your dreams, for example. I'm going to go off on a tangent for a
That's
second,
cool.
excuse me.
I
But
love it.
but sometimes, someone they will look like someone, like, God, that looked like my mom or my grandmother or, my neighbor Fred next door, but then you go, yeah, but when you ask that question, what did you feel
Mm-hmm.
about that person? Like, how did you feel about them? You may then get a very different answer.
Mm.
And that happens all the time, where
Mm-hmm.
it's just an image, and there's actually, so I don't know, I say that it I'm always trying to erase the imagery in many ways. Like, forget what you saw in the dream. Not
Right.
always, not
Right.
always,
Right.
because that can be very helpful. I'm just saying sometimes when you're trying to like really interpret things,
Mm-hmm.
you try to erase all those. How did it look? How did it even sound? Go to how did it feel though? What
Feel.
did that feel for you? Because uh, that's what your mind was wrestling with. It was
Mm-hmm.
wrestling with a feeling. It was wrestling with an emotion.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
yeah.
What about with lucid dreaming? What interests you in that?
Consciousness
Mm-hmm.
is what consciousness can do.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to officially step into this realm, let me stop for a second. Let me just explain really quick to everybody who is watching this what
Mm-hmm.
lucid dreaming is, because we need to. That there's a lot of confusion about this. A lot of people think, oh, a lucid dream is when I've had a really intense dream, or something was very vivid, and
Mm-hmm.
now lucid dreams are often very vivid, but that doesn't is not what defines a lucid dream. Lucidity in a dream is when you become 100% aware of your circumstance, your present moment circumstance. That means that you are completely aware while the dream is in motion that you are dreaming, and you get all of your senses back, just like you and I are talking right now. You become as sober and as clear headed as you are right now. And you go, for me, I would know about what time it was at night, because I would remember the last time I rolled over and everything. Like, all right, I know what's going on. I know it's about like 2 a.m, yada, yada. In fact, if I tap into it, I could even kind of tell what position my body was laying in, everything. I'm fully aware.
Yeah.
And what it took me years to really understand, the real trick behind it is that you're disengaging from the dream story. That's the whole thing. I mean, when you're in a dream, normal
Mm-hmm.
dreams, right? We're just talking the typical ordinary dreams. The problem with them is that we never stop and go, is any of this real? We never stop and do that, because
Totally.
we're so caught up. Our consciousness is so caught up in solving whatever dilemma has been presented to us, right? I mean, that's kind of the main thing that we're doing. Like, you're caught up in the momentum of whatever's going on. You're a CIA agent on
Mm-hmm.
planet X, and you're being chased by, some cult tribe of whatever. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
there's always this crazy stories that dreams whip up. A lucid dreamer is able to stop midstream and go, nonsense, this is crap, none of this is happening.
Hmm.
And you're able to pull back from that narrative. You're able to disengage from that narrative.
Hmm.
And now, as the more I've been studying this over the years, I found just how incredibly powerful that is, because once you disengage from your narrative, a weird thing happens. And I'm going to tell you why. First,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you why the weird thing happens, and I'm going to tell you what the weird thing is.
All
The
right.
first, the reason something weird happens is because when you're asleep, your body is shut down. You have got no link anymore to anything that's real. All your senses are shut down, right? I mean, you're kind of in this state. You're probably even locked in what they call muscle paralysis. your
Yeah.
your muscles are not really working. You're not moving around. You're totally, you're not unconscious. You're just your whole body is shut down. So the last thing that kind of binds you to any sort of reality, the last line of defense, you could say, that the brain has, is the narrative, is this internal dialogue that's being woven. And like I
Mm-hmm.
said, in the dream state, this gets woven as a dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once you disengage from that, now your consciousness is now disconnected from the physical and the mental.
Mm.
When you are disengaged from the physical and the mental, you can astrally project.
Hmm.
Ta-da! That's the crazy thing that happens. So
Hmm.
that's how lucid dreaming can naturally move into astral projection, which means that your consciousness can now move beyond the body. So I would say my fascination, my primary fascination and interest with lucid dreaming is, what are the limits to
Hmm.
this, to our consciousness? What is our consciousness? What does it mean to be conscious? Is it made inside of us? Is it coming from inside of us? What exactly is going on? And what, can we go somewhere else? And what does it
Hmm.
mean to go somewhere else? Will we always come back? Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And I have those answers for myself
Yeah.
after many, many years of studying this. But consciousness is it's this weird mystical thing that we are simultaneously dealing with all day long, and we're also grossly unaware
Hmm.
of it. It's like
Unaware.
this, we're
Yeah.
unaware of it, like,
Yeah.
for the most part, we don't realize just how bizarre it is, and yet it's just the strangest thing in the cosmos,
Hmm.
perhaps. And yet we don't really appreciate how strange it is until we really find a way to disconnect.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways to do that. I mean, lucid dreaming is not the only way to disconnect your consciousness from all your normal stimuli. You can do it through psychoactives, through meditation, through,
Totally.
just sensory deprivation tanks. There's all
Yeah.
kinds of little tricks that we can do. But lucid dreaming is it's a nice, so it's a built-in thing that you already have. You don't have to go, find a mushroom or something like
Right.
that. It's just it's a totally natural thing for the body, which can also kick in naturally occurring endogenous drugs like DMT and all kinds of
Hmm.
crazy things. So, yeah.
It's really cool to hear you talk about that, and kind of how your mind or you are exploring those. Like for me, I resonate with what you said about the narratives. Like I've never had a lucid dream, so I'm just along for the ride. Like these things,
Yeah.
my dreams just happen, and I'm just there, and I'm not even aware that I'm in a dream. Like it's
No, you're
just
you're being dragged by the narrative,
right.
essentially. I mean, on
Yeah,
some
yeah,
level, you're being
totally.
dragged by the momentum of the narrative, which is fine. That's how most of it is. But
Hmm.
my guess, though, Mason, is what I'm going
Hmm.
to suggest, is that my guess is that the more that you start bringing your focus to this, the more you work with this and do these podcasts and start
Yep.
reading about these things, I suspect that you're going to have more opportunities in dreams to start waking up.
I mean, I'm becoming a little more aware in some of my dreams on
Okay.
certain aspects, and like
Okay.
I've made things like appear and whatnot. So I'm like, I
Okay.
think I'm beginning to like kind of grasp a little bit, but like again, with some of the stories that people have told, but that I've heard about lucid dream, like I think I'm a ways off. But I think like just being
Not
aware that
necessarily.
I think being aware that you can be in a little bit of control, I think that's a starting point. That's how I see it, at least. That's how I interpret it.
Okay. So my suggestion is, I'm going to give you one just
Please.
basic idea,
Yeah, please.
and it's going to be so simple. It's going to be insanely simple,
All right.
but it may be one of those things that takes you years to achieve. That's
Mhm.
okay. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I mean, your focus and your awareness is wherever it needs to be right now. But
Hmm.
you seem to have if those who are listening, those who have a natural curiosity for these things, this is a piece of advice.
Hmm.
My suggestion is to start getting this idea into your head and start drilling it into your head as much as you can. And here's the concept. I want everyone, including you,
Hmm.
to, whenever you think of it, whenever it occurs to you, maybe put a note on your phone, maybe put stickies around your house. People have done all sorts of weird things with this little trick.
Yeah.
And you are simply going to remind yourself as much as you can to do one simple thing. You are going to lift your hand in front of your face and you're going to stare at it. That's it. That's it. If you can do that, if you can do that in a dream state,
Hmm.
it will be amazing.
Hmm.
And I'm going to tell you why. There's this strange universal quality in our dream states, and everyone experiences this. I've not heard anyone. Well, I did hear a couple people who claimed that they didn't, but it's a long story. I don't want to
That's
confuse
fair.
anyone.
That's
I don't
fair.
want to I don't want to confuse anybody right now.
Yeah.
Just trust me on this.
Okay. Yeah.
Lift your hand in front of your face and just hold your attention to it. Simple as that. The reason I'm saying this is because in a dream state, whatever you hold your attention to for too long, it will shapeshift. It will shapeshift. It will go out of focus. It will turn into something else. I've watched my hand grow more fingers in front of me. I've watched my hand turn invisible. I've watched it change colors, and yeah, my fingers came off and all sorts of crazy
Yeah,
things.
right.
Well, here's the thing. If you can send that signal to yourself to just look at your hand,
Hmm.
it's a real simple thing,
Yeah.
and you're able to do that in a dream state. Once your own hand shapeshifts in front of you, I'm going to tell you now, it's like a bolt of lightning through your spine. You are now 100% aware that
Hmm.
you are dreaming. There is no question whatsoever of
Right.
what's going on. You will become fully like, well, there it is then. Like
Yeah.
there's no doubt about it.
Gotcha.
Because a lot of us, we have, and maybe you've had some of this before, a lot of people who have a very active dream life, they think they've had a lucid dream, but this is what's actually happened. They'll be like, for example, maybe running away from some team of bad guys or whatever crazy things that are chasing them in their dream state. And they'll have like this thing in the back of their head where they're like, I know that none of this is real. This is just a dream. This is ridiculous. None of
Right.
this is, they can't hurt me, right? Because I know that this is just a dream. And you're kind of getting on a border there a little bit have you ever experienced anything like
Yeah,
this?
we're
A little bit,
aware. You're just
a
aware a
little.
little bit.
A little bit, but the problem is that, again, you are still caught up in that narrative that I've been
Hmm.
talking about. You're like, well, I think it's a dream, but yet you're still running from whatever those things are behind you, right?
Right.
So
Totally.
there's still a part of your head that's caught up in the storyline. So that's what
Yeah.
we want to try to get past that hump and go into full consciousness.
Hmm.
Uh, and there's all sorts of, people, I've heard of lucid dreamers talk about all sorts of tricks, like, well, that numbers will shift in a lucid dream, or they can look at their phone and their phone doesn't look right. Or if you ever seen the movie Inception,
Yes. Love
yeah,
it.
so they were using
Sick.
tools. They were using what they were called totems. Is that what they called them?
I think so. I
I
think
think they're
that sounds
called
right.
totems.
Yeah.
And it's a nice, elegant solution. It's cute, but I would disagree with that. I really like the idea, but the
Yeah.
reality is that when you find yourself in a dream, your phone is not necessarily going to be in your back pocket. Your little top that
Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio had is not
Right.
going to be in your pocket. It's not going to be on you.
Right.
But what will be on you is your hand. This seems to be a universal quality. And
Okay.
we don't know why. I have a suspicion that our hands, we're always looking at our hands, and it is our main tools that we use to manipulate the world, right? So
Absolutely.
it would make sense that our hands, for some reason, always kind of, there's some version of them in our dream states. So
Yeah.
they're always going to be there. And so I would always start with that. So if anybody ever gets to that point where
Yeah.
you can just look at your hand, you see it shapeshift, uh, I would say then contact me from there. Then I'll give you step number two. So, but because that first step, it sounds like
Yeah.
such a simple thing, but it might take you months or years to get to that idea. But if you do it throughout the day, just do it from time to time. Go, am I dreaming? Am I dreaming? And just stare at your hand, just for a few moments. It doesn't
Hmm.
take long. In a dream state, it'll only take a few moments of your awareness held to anything in your dream state. It will do something really weird, and
Interesting.
it will blow your socks off right then and there. There'll be no doubt
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Well, I'm glad we covered that because I mean, someone could say, yeah, I'm a lucid dreamer, but we can't prove that that person is telling the truth. Dreaming is just one of those things you have to take people's word for it. And
Yep, totally.
I don't know why someone would lie about that. But there are people out there, that
Sure.
want to be a part of the whatever. But I think it's important to distinguish those lines between narrative dreams, being aware you're in a narrative dreams versus actually being lucid and in control, kind of everything.
Yeah, the thinner the narrative, and it's weird because there's a direct correlation between how thin that narrative is and just how conscious you are. In fact, what I think most people find, if they really think about it, the most vivid dreams that they have, unless they are wrestling with one of those big emotional things that I was talking about earlier, like your body and mind has to get out, it's like, hey, you are ignoring this giant emotional problem or something, and it's just like an intense emotional thing, or it's something from your past trauma.
Yeah.
Short of that, I would say that the most intense dreams that we have are actually the ones that where actually very little is going on. Sometimes where it's just, I've talked to so many people who are like, I don't know what it was. Like I was just staring at the ocean,
Hmm.
like, and I wasn't doing anything. And I just had this very slight idea that I was on vacation in some beach I'd never even seen before. And my family was back in some bungalows behind me, but mostly I was just kind of staring at the ocean. And those can be some of the most intense things. And you are right there. You're like right on that border of
Hmm.
total lucidity. It's like you've just got this thin streamline of a narrative going back in the background of like, yeah, my family's in the bungalow back
Yeah.
behind me. It's like this little thing whispering to you, trying to keep your world in perspective. And
Hmm.
that's what I'm always saying is drop that, get rid of that narrative, get rid of all of that, and just focus on what's in front of
Focus.
you. So that if you can do that,
Cool, man. Well,
you will become fully aware.
cool. I'm gonna work on it.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, like, there's so much information out there. It's hard to pick one, but that's the only, and it sounds simple enough. But
Yeah.
again, also easier said than done.
Yeah, it is, but it's one of those things again that's it's so I think it comes we're weird creatures. We are
Absolutely.
creatures, like we were saying, that we are very drawn to storylines. We're drawn to narratives, so it is something that comes very, very simply to us, that we are
Yeah.
thinking we think in stories. We think in stories all the time, but we can also remember that uh, we weren't always like this. Our
Yeah.
species wasn't even always like this. We only acquired oral language some 100,000 years ago, and we've been roaming this planet for like something like 250,000 years or so. So I'm just saying
Hmm.
that we we're wired for stories, we're wired for all of this, but we're also wired to just be fully awake to the moment.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, can you go into maybe a dream or two?
Sure.
Kind of give us a little bit of context, maybe whatever details you need to leading up to it, and then kind of just jump into it.
Sure. Gosh, one of the there's one story. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories
Cool.
because there's one. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to actually start with my first lucid vision that I ever had.
Awesome. I
That
love
was when
that.
I was 19 years old, and it's still to this day. It's still the most for me. It's burned into my soul. I'll never forget this dream.
Did
It is so intense, and I was fully lucid. I was fully awake, and I never, at the time, I had never even heard of the idea of a lucid dream when this happened. But then later, if we have time, I'll tell you another story of something that I remember. I said, you have to challenge yourself. I don't even know how I'm going to tell this next story because I've never even tried to describe it before because what happened is so abstract, but it's such a cool idea. I'm going to try to describe it to you.
all
I'll
right.
see.
You
I'll
got
see how. I'll see how much I trip over my own words. We'll see
you
how
got
it
me
goes.
excited now, so you got to at least try.
I'll try. I will try, definitely.
Did it come natural to you? Did you ever try to get into lucid dreaming? It just came to you.
I never knew what lucid dreaming was.
Okay.
Again, I'm 47, so this was
Yeah.
like when I was 19. So you got to understand, this is almost 30 years ago,
Pre-internet.
somewhere around. It was pre-internet.
Yeah.
There was no, I had never heard of this stuff. And, again, my dad, yes, he was a yoga teacher, but, my parents really kept their philosophies and their beliefs pretty much to themselves. They were never
Hmm.
dogmatic with me. It was I'm so grateful for them because of that, because I had such a wonderful upbringing that I never had a specific rigid belief structure shoved down my throat. I'm so grateful that I was able to just kind of like, go out into the world. And as confusing as it was,
Yeah.
in retrospect, it was the best thing for me. I
You,
had no idea what was going on.
hmm.
And especially when this first experience happened to me, I had no idea what had happened. In fact, I even for a while I thought maybe something was medically wrong with me. I'm like, maybe I'm having seizures
Wow.
in the morning or something. I
Wow.
mean, I didn't really know. I mean, because they
Yeah.
were that intense. And people who have like epilepsy, they often will speak of having, you know, extremely vivid, almost prophetic, like, hallucinatory visions while they go
Wow.
into these states. And so I was kind of wondering, like, God, do I have like epilepsy or something? Am I seizing? It's so intense. It was insane.
Wow.
So here's the story. I'll tell you exactly what happened,
Cool.
and I'll give you this setup too, because I think it's important. Uh, I was I was just out of high school, and I knew that I was going to borrow my mom's car for the day. So I drove her to work in the morning, and then I went back to bed. That I think is important because I had to actually get up, and I had to go drive a car, and then I had to go back, and then I went back to sleep. That is the prime thing that you want for lucid dreaming. Your mind is awake. You were just outside dealing with the world, and now, but I was still tired because it was only
Yeah.
like 6:30 in the morning
Right.
or something. I'm like, I'm still sleeping for a couple more hours.
Yeah.
But also, I've already done the bulk of my sleeping, so my deep sleep was already in the past. I already done that. So now I had primed myself beyond my awareness. I had no idea anything about, how to do this, but I primed myself perfectly. I woke up, I was awake for a solid half hour at
Hmm.
least, and then I went back to sleep. So I would say within maybe 20 minutes of falling back asleep, I found myself in a forest. And when I say I found myself in a forest, I mean that it was the most intense vision I've ever experienced in my life, not
Hmm.
in my dreams, in my life. Like, it was more real than real. It was more realistic than anything I've ever experienced. And at this time, at 19, I had not done drugs, by the way, at this point. I
Okay.
never had touched a psychoactive. I get that question a lot, so I
Yeah.
just go ahead and answer that. So what were you on? I'm like, nothing, nothing at all. In fact, marijuana was always kind of around in high school, but in retrospect, I know now that, God, it was all crap. It was just terrible.
Mm.
Like, it was ditchweed is what we
Yeah.
call it. It was like it gave you a little bit of paranoia and a headache, and that was about all that was good for. But I
Swag.
had, yeah, it was garbage. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
swag, definitely. So I had not, my experience was light beer. I mean, that's it. I had no drug background whatsoever.
Gotcha.
So I'm finding myself in a forest. I and I'm very confused because I know I'm dreaming. I know that my body's asleep. I'm fully aware of this, and that in of itself is a pretty damn strange state to be in. To
Hmm.
go, it's like, have you ever experienced really high definition virtual reality?
No.
Yeah, with
Sounds
the
cool.
goggles and everything.
Sounds really cool, but
I've played around with like the high levels of the Oculus and those kind of things,
I've
and I
heard
would
of them.
say that it's pretty close to,
Really?
kind of, it's close to a lucid dreaming experience. I mean, they're not there yet, but I see the potential of, if they can get that technology down just a
Interesting.
little bit more, it's like you are in a fully realized reality. But it's not like, again, it's not like a dream where you are kind of like that. You're kind of asleep still because you're being dragged along by that storyline again.
Yeah.
That was not what was going on. I was standing in a forest,
Hmm.
just standing there. So I kind of get my bearings. I kind of look around, and these trees are huge. The sun is out. It's about maybe 9 in the morning or so. And I'm thinking, is this a place that I know? This does not look familiar. Is this something that my memory is dragging up? I'm not really sure. But yet, I mean, I could feel the sun on my face. I could feel the wind blowing through the trees. I'm like, this is like real. Like, I am here, but
Wow.
where am I? So at that point, an image briefly kind of floats off to my left peripheral, and I look, and I realize it is the cabin that I used to stay in when I was a little kid, that my parents used to take me to, in a town called Dowagiac, Michigan.
Hmm.
I realized I'm in Dowagiac, but the house hasn't been built yet. So there's no roads, there's nothing. I know this area, but there's no roads, there's no housing. So
Hmm.
this is 200 years in the past, right?
Wow.
So that's my first realization, that I'm looking at this area of Michigan. Then I realize there's sort of this, and the best way I can describe it, because it's so abstract, there's like this, I kind of have an overlay over my vision a little bit, and I realize that I'm not even me. I'm looking through somebody else's eyes, and I realize that I'm kind of tapping into this kid's memories, this child, a native inhabitant of that land, again, a Native American, a Native American Indian, some
Yeah.
200 years in the past. I'd say that maybe he was about 7, 8 years old. And the more that I tapped into this kid's memory, I started to like kind of pick up more information. I knew where my tribe was. I knew where they were at. I knew a little bit more about
Oh,
myself. So information started kind of seeping into my consciousness. And I also knew that I was with a dog. There was a dog with me that had followed me out of the camp. I remember that. It was
wow.
just kind of trailing behind me. I also knew that I was in a spot that I was not supposed to be in. I was in an area that some of the elders, I was remembering the elders used to come to this spot to like do a ritual, or they would to do some form of meditation.
Hmm.
I didn't have those words exactly
Yeah.
what they were, but I wasn't supposed to be here, and that's why I was there, is what I realized. Like, I was a mischievous kid who's like, I'm going somewhere. I wasn't, that's where the sacred ceremonies take place, whatever. I'm not supposed to be here.
Hmm.
And there's a specific spot on the ground that I'd always been told, this is the area. You do not go to this spot, and you certainly don't sit on this spot, because that's where the main elder, the wise man, the medicine man, the shaman, whatever it was
Right.
that they called him, that's where he does his ritual. So me being this kind of child who's off doing what I'm not supposed to do, I'm like, I'm going to go sit on this spot.
Damn.
So I go and I sit on this area, and given what I know about the land, I know exactly where this geographically actually was. It was kind of actually on this, where today there's actually a crossroads
Hmm.
of a couple of roads that cut through this town, and to one direction it leads to the lake, and the other direction, over this hill, there used to be a gas station, yada yada.
Okay.
I've not been in this town for years and years now at this point, but anyway, at this point, all I can see is there's a clearing around me. Uh, Again, trees. That's really all I'm seeing. I go and I sit down on that spot. As I sit on that spot, I start hearing this noise underneath the ground, and it's this rumbling that sounds like it's coming from the center of the earth, and it's like a freight train is launching straight up towards me, and I can hear this rumbling, like coming closer and closer, and it's like coming up closer and closer to the surface where I'm sitting. And as I'm sitting there, and as this rumbling energy starts getting closer and closer to me, I start hearing this music playing. And as this music plays, I realize that I have heard this music play in every one of my incarnations at some point. Now, I don't know what that meant at the time. That was the only information I was given, that this is the music that I have heard at some point in every lifetime. Again, whatever that means, right?
Right.
But that was the information I was handed, and I was like, oh, that music. And it was like an orchestra of heavenly violins and harps and yada yada
Wow.
yada. I mean, it was just an incredible, and it was a very specific melody that sticks with me to this day, because now I've heard that melody again in my daily life, but we'll get to that in a second.
Could you play
So,
it if you had the chance to?
oh, you can play it too, because it's a very famous song that wasn't written at the time. I'll explain that in a second. We'll
Wow.
get
Cool.
to that.
Cool. Cool.
So, so what? So this rumbling, this music is playing. This rumbling is coming up closer, and then bam, it smacks into the base of my spine, which nowadays some people will call that kundalini, the idea of energy rising up through the spinal column.
Hmm.
And I was, for lack of a better phrase, I was shot into the atmosphere. I was in what people who experiment with DMT often refer to as a full total breakthrough. It
Hmm.
was, and in fact, I would say in retrospect, I know that DMT kicks in during some of my lucid dream states. Now, at the time, I had never experimented with hallucinogens, but
Right.
now, as I got older, I've done everything now. And
Right.
DMT, we know that DMT can be released, uh, in dream states, possibly during near-death experiences. We don't really know why, but for
Hmm.
me, I can kick in DMT during intense dream states, and in fact, to the point where I'll wake up out of them, and I have to actually collect myself for a couple of minutes, because I'll literally be tripping for a couple more minutes. I mean, it's very intense in
That
my
fe-
case.
that feeling is similar. I mean, you would identify. You could. I mean, I'm sure you could probably identify that feeling at any time when you get it. I've never had that experience, but it's something that's super identifiable.
Have you done DMT?
No,
I'm going to sound like Joe Rogan here for a second. Have you done DMT,
not
Mason?
not
No.
yet.
Okay. All right. Well, I would say that though what DMT can do to you in the most extreme cases, if you smoke enough of it at once, it's yeah, it's like you were being launched out of your body. It is
Hmm,
it's totally intense. It is
hmm,
just extremely intense.
yeah.
And so that's what happened. It's like I was shot into space.
Wow.
When that happened, I then heard a screaming, and it was almost like I thought maybe it's almost like a scream that you would hear like a baby who has just been born, sort of a thing. It was like a
Okay.
shout. Well, then I then realized that it was me who was screaming, and now I was awake, covered in sweat, sitting straight up in my bed. And I woke up. I'd woken up, but I was woke. I mean, I was sitting straight up, and I was shouting at the top of my lungs because
Whoa.
it was so intense. I mean, it was frightening, but it wasn't because it was like terrifying as much as it
Right.
was so just unlike anything I had ever experienced
Wow.
in my normal world. I mean, it was like, and the first thing that I did was something that confused me at the time, but it doesn't confuse me anymore. The first
Hmm.
thing that I did is I leapt out of bed, I ran into the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror.
Hmm.
Now, I don't know why I did. I didn't know why I did that at first. Now it's obvious that I had no idea for a moment who I was.
Hmm.
It was that intense. Like I
Wow.
was like, am I still me?
Yeah.
Am I, who am I? Because what just happened, it was like, it's like my self-identity was just like, just ripped apart, just like totally, someone put a firecracker in and just blew it apart into a million pieces. And that was my first lucid slash astral projection, wherever you want to draw the line. But
Wow, dude.
all I knew from then, I knew that was not normal.
Hmm.
What just happened to me was something crazy. And,
Hmm.
I started telling people about it. And when you tell people about
Yeah.
these things, they're just like, yeah, so you had an intense dream. I'm like, damn it. No, that's not what it was. Like I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what else to
Yeah.
say, except that all I knew for sure was that
Wow.
what just happened was not normal.
Yeah.
Well, then after that, then these started happening uh, almost every night, and some of these
Oh.
experiences would go on for hours and hours, and each vision, each experience would teach me it's like I would gain some new little insight about reality or the way things work on these planes of consciousness. And this this went on forever. I mean, it still
Hmm.
goes on to this day. So I mean, at this point, some 30 years later, I'm a pretty weird guy, I suppose. I mean, I have thousands of stories somewhere in my background on, it's uh this information builds. I feel that there seemed to be almost an intention to the flow of these dreams, as if like someone or a larger part of my consciousness is on the other side going, well, if you can handle this, now let's crank up the difficulty level up a notch. Oh, you can handle that? Well, let's crank that difficulty up, a notch a little bit. Oh, you think you understand how this works? Well, then let's throw a curveball at you, and you'll see if that's really the way things work. It's like that
Interesting.
sort of thing. So yeah, that was, and like I said, that just retelling that story, I
Hmm.
mean, that gives me goosebumps,
Wow.
because I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
and again, I was 19 at the time, and it's like I can remember that like it just happened, like I just had that dream last night. It was and that's what kicked it all off. That was number one. Although, as a caveat to that, I will say that after I started getting into this practice,
Yeah.
and I did start finding some materials and some resources, that was tough because, again, no internet. I
Yeah,
just
dude.
kind of had to go to bookstores and go, am I looking in the new age section? Should I be looking
Right.
in a religious section? Should I be looking under psychology? Should I be looking under neurophysiology? I mean, I didn't know. I didn't know what I should even be studying. So that took a long time for me to start finding things, or at least resources, where I'm like, all right, at least this person knows. Clearly, you start connecting with people
Yeah.
as it goes on, and that and that's true even to this day, where I can have a conversation with somebody and I can tell pretty quickly if that person's a lucid dreamer. I'm like, yeah, you get it. I can tell that you get it. And it's like
Yeah. Huh.
it's an unwritten thing. And I can, even online sometimes, I can tell just from some people's responses and, Facebook groups or whatever, like you were saying, like, you're full of crap. You really have no experience in this. You've maybe read a book about it, but you don't have personal experience with
Wow.
this sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what kicked it off. And it took
Well,
years of research to get my bearings.
I mean, you had to, what is that, the Dewey Decimal System at the libraries back?
Yeah,
Is that
exactly.
is that what
That's,
you?
I mean, I tried everything, and then sometimes things would just sort of pop in front of me, and I found in some cases I just found some nice philosophy. I
Hmm,
I came across Taoism at some point along that
cool.
research, which did not directly help me with my dream states, although there are some practices in Buddhism and Taoism that definitely deals with conscious dreaming.
Yeah.
I mean,
Huh.
there's whole, this is not, I did not stumble upon a new practice, turns out. I mean, this has been going on. People have
Right.
been studying this for thousands and thousands of
Yeah.
years, but I had to find something that made sense to me,
Right.
because something that made sense to me from the culture that I was in too, because I'm also not, there's a lot of information out there where I'm like, I don't subscribe to your notions of how
Yeah.
things work, or your deities, or so
Right.
there's a lot of stuff that didn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said we were talking about feelings before. I mean, like, what was your feeling after that? I know you said it kicked everything off. Like, what was your feeling, and like, how did you go about your day after that?
Yeah, right. That became increasingly difficult because like I said, these started kicking in regularly, where I was having these experiences, and each one presented a new insight, a new challenge, one right after the other. And I started finding, as time went on, I mean, I was young. I was 19. I was just out of high school. I was not, the not an idiot. I was never a dumb kid or anything, but to a young person who's just, starting their life out, and mostly I've just been told what to do by adults, and now
Yeah.
something this insane is dropped into your lap. That I had a lot of uh, difficulty trying to figure out what's up, what's
Yeah.
down. So definitely that was very difficult. But like I said, what saved me is that I learned how to meditate. That saved my ass again and again and again, because
Hmm.
no matter how crazy things got, I could then still take that, you know what I mean? That 10 minutes, disconnect from all of it and just go, you know what? I'm not going to solve any of this. I'm not going to
Yeah.
try to figure any of this out for the next few minutes. I'm just, and then when you do that, all of that, all that information tends to kind of start settling a little bit. You can start coping with it. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then I started experimenting with, LSD, which, that threw everything else back up into the air all over again. But yeah, that's intense stuff. But my feeling about that specific dream
Yeah.
was, I still don't know what to make of it. I will say
Hmm.
this. I did do some research from my father and my grandfather, who was still alive at the time. Is that right? I may be wrong about that. I may be lying to you. My grandfather may have already passed away at that time, but my father did help build that cabin, which I'm talking about. Like,
Gotcha.
when he was a little kid, went up to this town in Michigan, and he helped build this cabin with his
Hmm.
father, and yada yada. So he knew something about the layout of the land before anything was out there, and he was at least able to confirm, yeah, that's interesting, there was actually a natural clearing in that spot.
Hmm.
And the spot that I mentioned where I felt my tribe was,
Yeah.
all he knew, I never have read any accounts. I did find out that there was absolutely a Dowagiac is clearly a Native American name.
Tribes out there.
There was definitely tribes out there.
Yeah.
I actually don't recall the names of them.
Hmm.
I never really studied them. I wasn't necessarily interested in studying
Right.
them, because I didn't feel that it's not like I felt like that I was being led to go study this tribe or anything.
Right.
That I didn't feel that was the point. I
Right.
felt like I was being shown something different than just go on some treasure quest of trying to figure out who that kid was, or
Right.
if I was actually somehow jumping into the past or something, which I don't know. All I can say is that it would make sense from everything that I have heard from my father, from the stories that if a tribe were to make an encampment, that area I was thinking the tribe would be an excellent spot for a tribe, given their connection, how far away they were from water sources and decent dry land to build a camp on, yada yada yada.
Yeah, yeah.
So but I wasn't given any other details to even work off of, so I felt that it was a fool's errand to try to even dig anything else specific. The
Hmm.
point is that I was awake. I went into a vision fully awake, and I was removed from the normal narrative of like a storyline. I mean, it
Hmm.
wasn't, I was just awake. And like I said, I tapped into this kid's memories when I consciously did so, but there was no, there was nothing happening. I was just there until just kind of started watching this kid a little bit, kind of go on this adventure, a little bit
Hmm.
of like, I'm going to go do this thing I'm not supposed to do and whatnot. But I knew it was not coming from directly from me as a normal dream was. It
Yeah.
was something totally playing by a whole different set of dynamics. And when
Wow.
you have a lucid dream, all I can say is that you know it when you have it.
Hmm.
There is a deep instinctual ancient part of ourselves that goes, this was not a normal, just working through my daily, churning through my daily events or my emotions or anything. This
Right.
was something on a whole other level. So and
Damn.
then I learned, like, eventually I learned how to kind of control them a bit. I learned
Yeah.
how to focus in them, and things just got weirder from there.
Have you ever been curious about going out to that spot?
I did go out to that
Did
spot.
you?
Yeah.
How did
So
that go?
we lost. We didn't lose the property. The property was sold to a cousin of mine, but he still let anybody in the family go. Go out there for like vacation or something.
Hmm.
So I wasn't able to get the opportunity for several years. I had entered college soon after that. So so I moved even further south away from Michigan at the time, but I had that in the back of my head forever.
Yeah.
I was like dedicated. I'm like, I've got to get to that spot.
Yeah.
And in fact, I had probably about another 20 more dreams mixed in over the next several years that involved that particular spot
Wow.
on the ground. I kept dreaming about this again and again. Now, not all of my lucid dreams involved that spot, but I'd say a good 20, maybe 30 or so. Sometimes I would have lucid dreams where there was just light coming out of this spot. Sometimes there were animals
Hmm.
in that same location. Sometimes there was a hole in the ground that led into God knows where.
Hmm.
There was always a different something was in that spot, and I ended up having years later I had a sort of shaman character come out of this sort of uh, liquid veil of light in that same spot
Wow.
on the ground, who came out and explained to me what was going on. And
Damn.
his explanation was, I still can't really make sense of it to this day. Basically, what the guy said was, because I wanted an answer. I said, what is this? Why am I drawn to this spot again? Why am I trying to
You're
be
right.
shown something? And I had, at this point, after many months or years of having some of these dreams were recurring, where I'd go back to the same location. Uh, I I I did finally do some reading about the idea of power spots on the ground in the shamanic terms, or even in some of the paranormal communities have the idea of intersecting ley lines or something like that.
Interesting.
I
That's new
don't
to
know.
me.
I don't know what to think about that, but some
Right.
people will say that there are natural areas of higher conscious energy on the
Interesting.
earth. So what this shaman said in this lucid vision, he said, you helped open up a conduit so that people can use this spot as a point of intersection to astrally project to different points through the multiverse.
Wow.
That's
Damn.
basically what he said. I said,
Whoa.
okay, how did I, and he kind of was saying, he thanked me actually, now that I'm thinking about it. He actually said, hey, I just came here to, like, by the way, thanks for your help. And I'm like, you have to understand, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what's going on. All I know is that I keep getting drawn to this spot, and sometimes I'll just sit there and I'll meditate or something.
Wow.
And his attitude was, yeah, well, that, you helped bring it's like somehow sitting there, and you opened up. It's like his. I don't remember what he said
Yeah.
word for word, but he said it was like unclogging a drain.
Hmm.
Essentially, he said you helped unclog some channel, essentially, and now everybody, other conscious entities or whatever throughout the cosmos, can now use this as a super highway of some sort. And
Fucking
again, it's
cool, man.
one of those
That's
things
awesome.
where I said, okay, uh, and what was even stranger was that he said, I want to give you something. I want to give you a gift. He said, what, I want to repay you somehow because of what you've done. This is fantastic. I'm like, I'm in a dream. You can't give me anything.
Right.
And he's like, no, you'll have it. He's like, this, whatever I give to you, you will have in your actual life. I'm like, no. And I felt like he didn't understand. I'm like, no, that's not how
Yeah.
this works. I'm like, I'm going to wake up and there's not going to be anything, I can't bring something back with
Right.
me. He said, what do you want? Well, he was wearing this strange, it was like a hoodie of some sort, and it was these weird like greens and yellows, and it was like this weird like tightly knitted like little zigzags and whatnot,
Hmm.
and it was like this oversized, like a kind of like a poncho of some sort,
Okay.
but it had like a hood sort of a thing. And I said,
I want
that. I said, I want that. Like, yeah, I'm like a bastard, aren't I? Like, I go to some shaman and I take the clothing off the guy's back.
Right.
But again, I was pretty young, and I'm just like, yeah. I'm like, can I have that? He goes, sure, absolutely. So he he takes this thing off and he gives it to me, and I put it on, and I'm still telling him, I'm like, it's not gonna be on me when I wake up. And he goes, you'll have it. You'll have it. So I woke up and it was not there. I mean, I'm not gonna.
Right.
I think that would have stopped my heart if that were the case. But when I woke up, I mean, there was a little bit of me going. I mean, I kind of checked for a second because I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna lose my mind if somehow this thing is on me."
Right.
But the weird thing is that it was about 3, maybe 4 years later. I was in Oregon. Actually, that's right. I was in
Really?
Oregon, and I found that hoodie and I bought it.
Really?
I found it. I mean, it was like, I'm like, that's it. And I was with my
Whoa.
girlfriend at the time. I said, that's what this guy was wearing. She's like, this is like some, in fact, hold on a second.
Dude, go grab it. That would be
Dude, I gotta
fucking
go find
awesome.
it.
Hey, thanks again for listening, folks. I hope you're enjoying the interview so far. Don't forget, there is a part 2 to this. That was only part 1. Be on the lookout. It should be coming out within the next week or so. Also, if you have a dream you'd like to share, shoot me an email at allaboardthedreamtrain.com. Also, you can share a dream by contacting the Dream Line. What that is I've set up a Google number that you can call and leave a voicemail on, or shoot me a text. You can be as anonymous as you'd like. Keep in mind, voicemails don't last very long, maybe a minute at the most, so you may need to leave a few. And you can also send me a text of your dream, and I might read it off in the next episode. That number is 503-609-0009. Again, it's a number that I probably won't pick up. It's going to go straight to voicemail, and you can be as anonymous as you'd like. That number again is 503-609-0009. If you enjoyed this episode, please give me a shout out on all social media at All Aboard the Dream Train, all one word, pretty much everywhere. Visit the website allaboardthedreamtrain.com, and if you have a dream you'd like to share, shoot me an email at allaboardthedreamtrain@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, folks. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.